Crank it up, let it roll. Stars and stripes in my soul. Steel toes on, boots in the gravel. Heartland truth on every channel. Open Bible, flag on the wall. We say what we believe when we don't talk it off. This is red, white, and raise hell. Cowboy hat, church bell. Can't scare us into silence. We were born to rebel from the back road to the beltway. We won't fade, we won't fail. Proud, loud, standing tall. Red, white, and raise hell. We back the bad, we guard the border. We love our guns and law and order. They try to shame every word we say, but we don't bow down, we just press play. This is red, white, and raise hell. Cowboy hat, church bell. Can't scare us into silence. We were born to rebel from the back road to the bell. Hey, we won't fade, we won't fail. Proud, loud, standing tall. Red, white, and raise hell. You can cancel the show, but not the crowd. We're still here, still talking loud. Hand of the free on every spell. Hit that mic, host, let the truth ring out. This is red, white, and raised hell. Cowboy hat, church bell. Can't scare us into silence. We were born to rail from the back road to the beltway. We won't fade, we won't fail. Proud, loud, standing tall. Red, white, and raised hell.
Oh, yeah, look at that screen right now. Yep. Good one today. Dr. Everett Piper in about an hour, in a half an hour, and then Congressman Max Miller in about an hour and a half on the program today. It's not bad by AI in this one. It's a pretty decent representation. So you never know what you're going to get. When I ask them to, to make a graphic, sometimes I'll ask Grok to do it. Sometimes I'll ask ChatGPT to do it. And I'll put a picture of Max Miller, for example, in there. And I'll put a picture of Dr. Piper in there. And sometimes they look pretty close. As they recreate the picture, they kind of have to break it down and put it back together again. And sometimes they look just terrible. In fact, this was the second effort on this one. First one that did a Max Miller looked nothing like him. I should probably show that. Anyway, but this one's not bad. That's pretty good likeness of Dr. Piper. And that's pretty decent likeness of Max Miller as well. So there you go. That is what is happening on the program today. Good morning to you. Thank you so much for getting with us on Strictly Speaking. Dr. Piper, we almost always talk about matters of faith, cultural things. I always call him our general leading the way in our culture war, much more so than just politics and things of that nature. It's politics, but it's the faith of it and the culture of it and the impact of politics on our faith and so forth, and our culture. So we're sticking to that today. And boy, we've got some good ones. We really do. Dr. Piper and I are going to talk about 3 matters affecting Christianity. He is, of course, a very prominent evangelical. And we're going to talk about 3 Christian things coming up because they're all, somewhat at the top of the news. The Supreme Court, not yesterday's birthright citizenship. I'll get to that in a second. But the Supreme Court back on Tuesday with their 8-1 decision in favor of a Christian therapist who is now allowed to counsel children who think, that they're a different sex or a different species, that they're not. No, you are indeed what you are. They're allowed to do that. They're allowed to tell these young people that, because Colorado had banned it. Insane as it sounds, and it is, Colorado had banned therapists from telling the truth. You can tell the lie and affirm their fake identity, but you can't tell them the truth. That's basically what Colorado said. Christianity, and it shouldn't even matter, really, quite frankly. That should just be insanely stupid to begin with. But freedom of speech and freedom of religion essentially are what won the day for that therapist in that Supreme Court case. So we're going to talk about that with Dr. Piper. We're going to talk about Jaden Ivey, the Chicago Bulls player, kicked out of the league for expressing pro-Christian views. And then thirdly, we're going to talk about The View. The View, and their war against families. I don't know if you heard about this one because we didn't cover it yesterday, but Isabel Brown, who is working with the Daily Wire and with PragerU, and she's the author of that book, End of the Alphabet: How Gen Z Will Save the World. Yeah, she's great, and she made some comments about telling young people, get married, start families. It's really, really important for you, for yourselves, for your, for God, and for the country too. Get married. And The View went ballistic. How dare she tell people to get married? It's too expensive to get married, and it's too expensive to have children. What are you doing? They full on Marxist, anti-nuclear family stuff. And she battled back too. So anyway, we're going to hit all of that with Dr. Piper. That'll be coming up here in about a half an hour. At 8:30, Max Miller is going to be on with us, Congressman Miller, because he's kind of leading the way. In fact, I don't know if I can. I guess I can share this with you real quick. Really good coverage of this. Don't look for good coverage in the local places for obvious reasons. You're not going to get real coverage from the Steamer, the Cleveland Plains Steamer. You might get it from other places like this. This is Red State, and Red State did a story. GOP rep calls on the War Department, the Pentagon, to intervene as school board tries to dump Air Force vet while serving overseas. And we told you the story on Monday, Tuesday, and it's a huge one. And Ashley McTaggart needs our help, and she needs Congressman Miller's help. And quite obviously, there he is. He is ready and willing to provide it, and that's good news. That's a really big story. So we're going to talk to him about that, as well as everything that's happening on Capitol Hill. I'm going to start here. Well, I guess it wouldn't be starting, but I'm going to get into the Supreme Court yesterday on birthright citizenship in a moment. But before I do that, I need to bring up something to give massive, massive amounts of kudos and respect on the name of Senator Bernie Moreno. And the reason why is Senator Moreno laid it out on this program back on Monday. We talked about what's going on with the DHS funding and ICE funding, and the Senate leaving, and then the Senate sending over something on what's the word? I'm blanking. Unanimous consent. They sent the bill late last Friday night, like 2:00 in the morning, under unanimous consent to fund everything except for ICE, and sent it over to the House, but the House wasn't there. And Mike Johnson had already adjourned the House. So therefore, we were back in limbo again. And Bernie Moreno was taking a lot of heat from a lot of people. But he came on this program on Monday, and he laid out for us the plan. And it was an extraordinary plan. Extraordinary insofar as it's about one of the only ones that will work, that will give us two things. One, get people back to work immediately in the DHS. And number two, give us a chance to fund our borders and our sovereignty for a long time to come through reconciliation. He laid all of this out. It was basically a five-step plan, okay? But those were the end goals, as well as, by the way, punishing the Democrats. And that might not sound very diplomatic, but punishing them insofar as they need to make sure they never do this again. And everything that they have done to harm citizens and harm national security through this DHS partial shutdown because they're so mad that ICE is doing the job that President Trump was elected to have them do. All right. They have to make sure that they can't do this again. And that's what Senator Moreno laid out for us. Okay. So yesterday, I get a text message from United States Senator Bernie Moreno that says, quote, this is 4:48 p.m. yesterday afternoon, quote, as you saw, cooler heads prevailed, and the plan I laid out to you is what we will do. Big victory. And I thanked him for leading the way. And how did he lead the way? Well, President Trump pretty much laid it out. I'm going to share this screen with you. This is Senator Moreno's Twitter, X now. And Senator Moreno posted this yesterday afternoon. Phenomenal leadership by President Trump. We will fund all of DHS one way or another, and Republicans in Congress, united and in unison, are going to make certain Democrat members pay the price for traumatizing our federal law enforcement families. Now, I don't know how well you can see that on your small screen if you're watching on your phone, so I'm going to read this to you. And this is from Rapid Response 47. So this is basically, GOP, zooming that up to the best I can for you. Yeah, maybe you'll be able to see this as I scroll down now through it. I can never tell what you're seeing compared to what I'm seeing, but I'm working on it. But this is what Senator Moreno was talking about. Republicans fully support our great men and women of law enforcement. Maybe this is President Trump, by the way, for being reposted because he's not on X, he's on Truth Social. So these are posted for X viewers by groups like Rapid Response. Fully support our great men and women of law enforcement. Maybe the word should be love. America thanks each and every one of our wonderful police, Border Patrol, ICE, and others for their work to protect our cities, towns, streets, and indeed our country itself. Unlike Republicans, Democrats want to defund the police, Border Patrol, and all immigration enforcement. They want to allow criminals, the mentally insane and lunatics from all over the world to come into our country totally unvetted and unchecked, putting Americans in serious danger. That's why we are going forward to fund our incredible ICE agents and Border Patrol through a process that doesn't need radical left Democrat votes and bypasses the Senate filibuster, which should be repealed immediately. Working in close conjunction with House Speaker Mike Johnson and Senate Leader John Thune. I'm going to pause there and say, kinda, but it's less John Thune than it is Bernie Moreno. Second year senator from our great state of Ohio. Bernie Moreno is the one who put this together and sold it to John Thune. That's why he came on this program. And he wrote an op-ed, by the way, and I don't know if it has run yet. Senator Moreno actually shared with me an op-ed that he was going to submit to the Wall Street Journal and other places back on Sunday with his personal outlined plan. And I asked him where it was going to run. He said he hoped in the Journal, but I don't know that it ever did. But then he came on my program right here talking to you and me and laid all of this out on Monday. And Senator Moreno deserves all of the credit for this, not John Thune. But nonetheless, Thune is leadership. He's the majority leader. And so therefore, President Trump is acknowledging him in this message. All right, I need to get that clear. We are going to work going back to the president's Truth Social post shared by Rapid Response on X. We are going to work as fast and as focused as possible to replenish funding for our border and ICE agents, and the radical left Democrats won't be able to stop us. We will not allow them to hurt the families of these great patriots by defunding them. I am asking that the bill be on my desk no later than June 1st. He's talking about the reconciliation bill. Our law enforcement officers and the American people should not have to wait until the Democrats see reason or learn the hard way through the polls. Hopefully, everyone will be voting Republican for the midterms. Through simple unification, Republicans can do this without the Democrats. In the meantime, we will continue to use funding from the great big beautiful bill, which is giving record tax rebates to citizens all over the country, to ensure that ICE and Border Patrol agents are paid on time and in full, as we have been doing for them throughout the Democrat shutdown. Immigration enforcement will continue, and our border will remain secure, with no murderers, drug dealers, or criminals of any kind entering our country. The American people should use this opportunity to reflect on the tens of millions of illegal aliens, including many violent criminals such as murderers, rapists, human traffickers, child molesters, and more, that Joe Biden and his far-left liberal Democrat cronies in Congress, led by Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer, invited and allowed into our country for the 4 years before I took office. These radical, weak, and incompetent Democrats have made clear that if they resume power, they will never again provide funding to secure our border or enforce our immigration laws. The Democrats are the party of open borders for criminals, crime, zero immigration enforcement, defunding the police, and allowing the worst of the worst to have get-out-of-jail-free cards. They want America to be open and available to violent. Sorry, I got to zoom this up a little bit here. Sorry, because I had to zoom this up. I can't zoom it any more than that. I apologize. I'm just going to have to read it as is. The American people should use this opportunity to reflect on the tens of millions of illegal aliens, including hold on. We got to that part already. We did that part already. Where was I? Defunding the police and allowing the worst of the worst to have get-out-of-jail-free cards. They want America to be open and available to violent criminals, thugs, and lowlifes, not our great and loving American patriots. Don't forget that in November, win the midterms. Thank you for your attention to this matter, President Donald J. Trump. All right. So Senator Moreno basically is pointing out that President Trump is following the plan that he laid out. And he gave this to Mike Johnson, and he gave this to Majority Leader John Thune. This is leadership without being a member of leadership, and it's extraordinary. And we should be applauding Senator Bernie Moreno. It's exactly what he came here and laid out on this program, like I said, on Monday. And just for the sake of reminding, the 5-point plan that he laid out that essentially President Trump is acknowledging we're going to follow using reconciliation included these 5 points. Fund Border Patrol and ICE for 10 years, not just through 2029 the way it is now, 10 years. Number one, so this stunt can never happen again. Number two, give those agents bonuses for the stress Democrats caused. That's going to be in the reconciliation bill too. 3, defund all sanctuary cities. That will be in the reconciliation bill. 4, defund states that violate federal election laws, because this is all tied to elections as they import their millions of new voters, their millions of new would-be voters if we didn't stand in the way. And then 5, strip every Democrat priority we had previously agreed to in the name of bipartisanship. Democrats touched the stove, and we want them to feel the burn. That's what Bernie Moreno actually said. He said it in a message, and he said it on this program, and it is now going to come to pass. So, Senator Moreno, thank you, at least based on the president's words. When the president is talking about what the president is talking about in that Truth Social post that he wrote there, when he talked about being able to do this without any Democrat support, he's talking about reconciliation. Now, the original reconciliation bill, or a plan, I guess I should say, was targeted for September. That's way too close for comfort. September, October, November, ding, 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 ding. It is obviously midterm time. So now we're talking about June, on the desk by June 1st. And that is something that can happen if there is a commitment to it. The question is, will there be a commitment to it by Congress? And that's going to mean congressional Republicans on both sides, because the Democrats, of course, will want nothing to do with it. They will try to fight, obstruct, and resist every step of the way, any way they can, anything that the president is trying to do with respect to this, and what obviously Bernie Moreno and leadership will try to do. Well, with respect to reconciliation. With reconciliation, you only need, this is how the one big beautiful bill passed. All right. You only need a simple majority vote. You don't have to deal with the filibuster. You don't have to worry about ending debate with 60 votes and then being able to vote on the bill. You can just go straight to the majority vote, and that will get all of this done. So Senator Moreno kind of laid out a plan, and it looks like the president of the United States and congressional leadership are supportive of that plan. Mike Johnson even kind of went back a little bit on his previous statement where he said, this is a joke. There's no way we're going to do this. Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House, basically said, yeah, okay, this is actually a workable plan. We're going to do this. And the left is flipping about that. I think I have an article here from working yesterday on this. Question is, do I have it handy? Maybe not. And it's okay. Oh, we're also going to talk about the funding for NPR too with Dr. Piper. I just found that one too. Anyway, but Mike Johnson basically kind of backtracked a little bit previously when talked about what the Senate had suggested. But now that it's been explained to him a little bit further and a little bit better, apparently Mike Johnson is all for it now too. So this is how it works. This is fantastic, and I really hope it is. It is, I don't want to call it simple, but it is as effective as Senator Moreno and President Trump through that Truth Social message say that it is. All right, briefly, because I got Dr. Piper coming up in 9 minutes. Briefly, let's talk about what happened yesterday. The Supreme Court heard a challenge to President Trump's executive order. He wrote an executive order on day one of his second term, January 20th or 21st. I think he did it on the 20th, actually, of 2025. President Trump came in and signed that executive order, essentially repealing birthright citizenship and thus repealing the 14th Amendment. Now, that's some pretty heady stuff. You don't get to amend the Constitution. You don't get to amend the amendment to the Constitution by executive order. This was always going to be challenged in the courts because necessarily it had to be. If I was on the other side, I would have to challenge it too. But so yesterday it did. It reached the Supreme Court. And when President Trump signed that executive order, lower courts immediately blocked it, citing the 14th Amendment, citing mistakenly, by the way, what I talked about yesterday here, the Wong Kim Ark ruling from 1898, because that was dealing with legal residents in the United States and whether their children would be American citizens rather than illegal or just temporary visitors because of vacation tourism. This is what this is all about largely. So the Supreme Court heard this yesterday, and, there was some great response. Sadly, based on the tone, President Trump showed up. Just hit that part too. President Trump basically made an unprecedented move. He went and sat in the front row along with Attorney General Pam Bondi. They sat in the front row watching the oral arguments. They weren't allowed to speak, obviously, and I'm sure that was very difficult for President Trump to bite his tongue. But he sat there for the first, hour or so of the Supreme Court oral arguments. And then he went out, left the building, and tweeted something about how ridiculous and stupid it is that the United States is pretty much the only developed nation that allows birthright citizenship. The tone of the arguments, according to those who were there, make it very, very clear they're not going to allow this. The Supreme Court, despite its 6-3, quote unquote, conservative originalist majority, is not going to back President Trump on this birthright citizenship end. All right. They were getting questioned. What the government attorneys were being questioned in ways by obviously the leftists on the court, but also the conservatives on the court. Amy Coney Barrett in particular, John Roberts, the Chief Justice. Questions were being asked. It was very, very clear that the bar is going to be way, way, way too high for the government to clear for the court to actually repeal birthright citizenship. So we're going to be stuck with birth tourism for a very, very long time is what it comes down to. Mark Meadows, former chief of staff of the president, former congressman, tweeted, "How is this even a serious conversation? The idea that anyone can fly from anywhere into America, have a baby, and then fly back with citizenship is unserious. And yet that's exactly what is happening. Birthright citizenship should be rejected by SCOTUS immediately." Meadows is right, but it's only the second best tweet that I wanted to pull up and I want to share. The best one kind of crystallizes it a little bit more. It gives you an idea of what we're dealing with on a more concrete level because it identifies some of the birther tourists. Liz Wheeler, the host of the Liz Wheeler Show and the author of Hide Your Children, Exposing the Marxists Behind the Attack on American Kids. She tweeted this yesterday after listening to the Supreme Court oral arguments. In the next decade, over 1 million Chinese communists will be able to vote in American elections. Let me read that line again. In the next decade, over 1 million Chinese communists will be able to vote in American elections. You heard me, she writes. Thanks to birth tourism, Chinese billionaires are paying surrogates to birth their children on U.S. soil so the babies are American citizens. The children are then taken back to China after birth, raised as communists. Then when they're 18, they're allowed to vote in U.S. elections. That's why birthright citizenship must end. 1 million votes swings any election. Soon, the Chinese communists will legally control our elections unless we end birthright citizenship. That's about as loud of a foghorn as can be sounded. It should be heard everywhere. That's a call to arms. And I don't mean literal physical. I mean, that's a call to action. Chinese communists are giving birth on American soil, then being raised in the CCP by the Chinese Communist Party. And then when they're 18, they're American citizens. They get to come over here and vote. And you will soon see, in the next decade or two, you will see the rise of Chinese-style communism in the United States. They will run their candidates, and they will have massive impacts from massive numbers of voters. And by the way, you don't think they're going to stop there, do you? You don't think they're going to stop with one generation? Because those young new Chinese voters who are American citizens as well will immediately start having their own children. And this is going to be the way. Let me give you a little bit of evidence of what Liz Wheeler was talking about with this statement by Kayleigh McEnany. This is a truth bomb. Make no mistake about that. Try to blow it up here so that you can see it. Kayleigh McEnany on Fox News laid it out this way.
Look at these numbers. Eric Eggers, I spoke to him Saturday. There are more than 500 firms in China that facilitate people coming from the Chinese Communist Party to give birth here in the United States. Obama enabled this through loopholes dating back to 2009. And what that could mean is 1 million new voters by 2030. Imagine that. Communist Party voters.
Communist Party voters. And this, as Kayleigh McEnany correctly points out, was and is the plan of Barack Obama. We are still feeling the effects of Barack Hussein Obama in 2026. And this was by design. Obama left office in 2016, but his influence on the country, to the extent that it can be while Donald J. Trump is president, but that is still in effect. It was in effect for the 4 years of the 4 stolen years of Joe Biden, obviously. And he is still driving and directing, if you will, policy and events, even from outside the borders, that are going to impact this country. So that's a huge, huge revelation that we got yesterday as the Supreme Court heard about, or I should say heard oral arguments over this. I want to share this one now. This is another really good one. This one is on the Will Cain Show, talking about the actual numbers in birthright tourism. So let's pop this one up for you here.
About birth tourism. It's booming. In 2023, over 300,000 babies were born to unauthorized or legal temporary immigrant mothers. Add that in total. It's 9% of the U.S. births in that given year. When we look at how that shakes out over time, a clear spike in the number of births to unauthorized immigrant mothers in the United States from 2019 to 2023. That's unprecedented. It's unforeseen. It's undeniable. But Chief Justice Roberts, unconvinced.
It certainly wasn't a problem in the 19th century. No, but of course, we're in a new world now, as Justice Alito pointed out, to where 8 billion people are one plane ride away from having a child who's a U.S. citizen.
Well, it's a new world. It's the same Constitution.
Here's the counterpoint about birth.
Can you believe what you just heard there from Chief Justice Roberts? Solicitor General John Sauer said no, but of course we're in a new world now, as Justice Alito pointed out, to where 8 billion people are one plane ride away from having a child who's a U.S. citizen. John Roberts is going back to the 19th century saying this wasn't a problem, and of course it wasn't a problem. It took an awful lot to get to the shores of the colonies and then the United States of America. After our Constitution was written, it wasn't as if people could just flock to the United States at that point in time. When that amendment was passed, it wasn't as if that could happen. But it is a new world now, and Justice Alito is correct about that. 8 billion people are one plane ride away from having a child as a United States citizen, and John Roberts, the Chief Justice, this is why I have no faith whatsoever in the right to verdict coming out of this thing. John Roberts said, well, it's a new world. It's the same Constitution. The Constitution, and look, I want to be very, very clear about this before I get off of the subject here. I am for originalism. I am not for partisanship from the standpoint of ideology on the Supreme Court. I am not for, I hate the breakdown of the liberal wing of the court versus the conservative wing of the court. They're supposed to be judges, justices, not politicians. So there shouldn't be conservatism and there shouldn't be liberalism. Now, we all know better, but there shouldn't be. What we should be referring to, and I say this every time there's a Supreme Court case, is originalism versus activism. And I am always going to side with the originalists, okay? The originalists tend to be the conservatives, the ones who say the document was written to stand the test of time. And yes, there are amendments to it. And yes, there are things that happen over time where you have to kind of apply certain new standards to what was written then. But it's why it was the most extraordinary document maybe in the history of the world, the U.S. Constitution. All right? Outside of the Bible, if we want to call that a document, but you understand the point. I will always side with the originalists. John Roberts is trying to make himself sound like an originalist when he said, yeah, but the Constitution is the same. It might be a new world, but the Constitution is the same. No, he is not being honest. He's not being upfront. He's not being a man of integrity, because the Constitution does say the same, but we need to examine all elements, all words in that amendment, in all of the amendments, of course. But when it talks about birthright citizenship, it specifically says, if you are born in the United States and on U.S. soil and are subject to the jurisdiction thereof, the United States. If you are subject to the jurisdiction thereof, and that's how you get into the issue of allegiance. And that came up yesterday in just mind-numbingly stupid commentary and questioning by the worst and most incompetent justice in the history of the court. The diversity hire herself, Ketanji Brown Jackson, appointed appropriately by Joe Biden, who probably had no earthly idea who or what he was appointing. But as she pointed out with respect to allegiance, she made the most insane argument about stealing somebody's wallet and being allegiant locally to that government because I'm under their jurisdiction of their criminal court or criminal statutes. It was just insane. But being allegiant to the government, being allegiant to the country means you have no allegiance toward another. In other words, coming here as a citizen of another country and here temporarily, legally or illegally, having your baby, dropping that anchor, if you will, and then going back to your home country with allegiance to that country means you are not subject to the jurisdiction thereof, and therefore you do not get birthright citizenship. So to me, and I think to the originalists, it is very, very clear that even originalist reading of the amendment says you cannot have birthright citizenship. But again, left wing of the court, including, sadly, some of President Trump's appointees, talking about Amy Coney Barrett, as well as Chief Justice John Roberts. From what we heard from them yesterday, this doesn't have a chance of being repealed, the birthright citizenship clause from the 14th Amendment. So that's just where we are. So it happened yesterday, and I think the handwriting is on the wall for that. But I also want everybody to know exactly how dangerous that it is. All right. I also want to remind you about something really, really important, and that is the fact that this program is brought to you, this episode is brought to you in part by my friend Mark King and Keeping Medicare Simple. Mark is, well, he's the best. And I know that's a very generic statement, but Mark has been doing Medicare in Northeast Ohio for nearly 40 years. And I have been sending people to him who are of Medicare age or approaching it for over 5 years now, just on my radio and podcast programs, because I trust him. And more importantly, they trust him. People who I send to Mark come back to me and say, thank you. That's exactly what I needed. I had no idea what I was getting into with Medicare. I didn't know how it worked. Mark explained it to me as slowly as I needed him to. And now I understand it and I have a great plan. Mark represents multiple carriers. He is not beholden to one insurance company, which means you have choices. And he is going to tell you the difference from one year to the next about what is in those plans. And that's why, again, he keeps it simple. The website is called Keeping Medicare Simple, keepingmedicaresimple.com. Check that out and then call 440-832-8936 for a confidential appointment with Mark King and his team at Keeping Medicare Simple. Mark and the folks at KMS, they're salt of the earth, and everybody that I send to comes back telling me the same thing. So make sure that you call Mark King, 440-832-8936. And thank you, Mark, for your foundational support of Strictly Speaking Unfiltered. Okay, I'm a few minutes late. I really wanted to get that rant in about birthright citizenship yesterday, so I'm a few minutes late getting to our guest, but he is dutifully waiting backstage for us. So let us welcome to the program now our regular Thursday commentator, Dr. Everett Piper, straight from the stormy landscape of Oklahoma this morning. Dr. Piper, good morning.
Good morning, Bob. Good to be with you.
Everybody's happy, safe, and healthy after the big storms?
Yeah, we rode a couple tornadoes through here. No, seriously, it was a welcome storm. We were in a drought down here already this spring, and we needed the water. So, yeah, I know it kind of put the kibosh on our connection last night because my smoke signals were ruined by the rain, so I couldn't connect very well with you. But good to be.
No problem. It's fine with me, but it only hurts you, not me, because you had to get up early and do this live instead of recording with me last night. So I was up anyway. So, all right, Dr. Piper, I was running through, if you have any thoughts on yesterday's Supreme Court hearing, I was running through the stuff you and I are going to talk about in my introduction, but I did veer off into the birthright citizenship questioning yesterday in the oral arguments. Any thoughts on that before we dive in?
Well, I listened to the last few minutes of your monologue that you just presented, and I agree with you. I do think we need to protect the originalism of our literature, of our documents. I'm an originalist constitutionally. I'm also an originalist, if you will, if we can apply that same language to the Bible. In other words, I believe the Bible says what it says and means what it says, and we should read it in the context of Occam's razor. The simplest, easiest to understand explanation is often the explanation we should go with, because that's what it means. That's what the authors intended. And this deconstruction and then reconstruction of everything in our culture right now is just bonkers. We want to tear everything down and then rebuild it in our own image as opposed to what the authors initially intended. And we do that with the Bible. And as you pointed out, the progressives in our judicial system do it with our laws. And essentially what you do is you end up gutting the very concepts that make our Constitution what it is and make our republic what it is. And we end up with something that is foreign to the very ideas of our founding fathers. So I agree with originalism. Now, I do have to admit that our founding fathers were not perfect. Some of the language they used obviously could have been better. But how, in this particular context, in the 14th Amendment that you've summarized, when they say, what's the language again? It's not allegiance, it says something else. Under the
jurisdiction. It's subject to the jurisdiction thereof. All
right.
Persons born on U.S. soil and subject to the jurisdiction thereof. Yeah.
Now, the problem with that is now we have to define that. What does the subject to jurisdiction thereof mean? Now, if you interpret it as you just did, that means you've pledged allegiance to a country, and that country that you've pledged allegiance to is the country under which you're subject, and you're subject to the jurisdiction of that country and its laws, then obviously those people visiting our country and having a baby while they're here on a visa or visiting or a tourist or whatnot, they're not United States citizens. They're not subject to the jurisdiction of the United States. They're not pledging allegiance to the United States. So therefore, your interpretation is correct. But we have to wrestle with what they intended. I think what they intended is what you just said. But when I go to France, am I subject to the laws of France? Well, yeah, I am while I'm there. So that's the dilemma I think we're in.
It's important, though. I think, Dr. Piper, it's important that it's not just about being subject to the laws. Everybody is subject to the law, but it is intending to remain loyal to that country. Allegiance isn't just a pledge; it is action as well. And this is a big part of this. I mean, we all know the reason why the 14th Amendment was actually written. Birthright citizenship was given to protect the children of slaves. They had to be American by birth because their parents didn't have a choice. They were brought here in chains. These children were born, and once slavery ended, they had to be. Oh, you're not an American. You get to be booted out of here. No, wait, huh? Of course they get to stay. This isn't their fault. This isn't their problem. They are American citizens by birth. That's what this was all about. But the interpretation of subject to the jurisdiction thereof, to me, means you are not just required to obey U.S. laws, but that you intend to follow U.S. laws as well, that you believe and want to stay in this country. That is what the allegiant part of this is. And anybody who comes into the United States illegally, so we're talking about two different things. There's birther tourism, and then there's illegal immigrants who come here and then want to drop anchor babies and say, oh, and my child is an American citizen, therefore we all get to stay. You can't break us up. Okay. The illegal aliens, the moment they put one foot on U.S. soil without permission, they have essentially said, I don't have allegiance to this country because the first thing I'm doing is breaking your laws. Okay.
Yeah, they're ignoring the jurisdiction of the laws and the Constitution.
Bingo.
There you go.
Yes.
Agree with you 100%.
So then their children, again, their children are not American citizens simply by being birthed. It's more than just a physical presence on U.S. soil. There has to be, and this is why the framers could have just said anybody born on U.S. soil is an American citizen, period, and ended the amendment. They didn't. They said, if you are subject to the jurisdiction thereof this land, that which brings into allegiance. They did that for a reason, because there are exceptions to people who are born on this soil, and we're laying them out now. For you, all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens. That's the actual language of the amendment, and it means you are fully subject to the laws, and you are allegiant. You have allegiance to the country, which includes, Dr. Piper, no allegiance to another country. Yeah. That ends the birthright citizenship, the birther tourism part of all of this, right? Because if you're coming here and visiting Disneyland and you're 7 months pregnant and you give birth early and boom, you have a child now on American soil, well you're still an Australian citizen or a Canadian citizen or a Somali citizen. It doesn't matter. You just had your baby here. It doesn't mean suddenly you are not a citizen of that country anymore. You still are. You intended to go back there. And that is exactly how that child and that mother should be treated, as citizens who gave birth, foreigners who gave birth on American soil. That does not get them citizenship. So I think framers covered it well.
Here, let me push back a little bit on this. Number one, it's the 14th Amendment. And when was the 14th Amendment passed? 1860. It's Civil War.
68, right? I think, 68.
1868. So it's not the framers that wrote the 14th Amendment. This is legislation that's 100 years after.
Okay, fair point.
Okay? So I think we need to remember that too. And I think the reality of a lot of legislation is that it's poorly crafted. It isn't worded properly, and we suffer the consequences of poor wording, poor definitions over and over again in the legislative process in the United States of America. I mean, how many times, the Affordable Care Act, or, you put whatever, fill in the blank any way you want in terms of whatever act, whatever legislation, whether it be a state legislature like Oklahoma or Ohio, or the federal legislature, where they create these laws, in this case, an amendment, and yet the language is fuzzy. And then the subsequent generations have to wrestle with the fuzziness of that language and fill in the gaps. And in fact, sometimes they craft it intentionally, and they even say so. Well, future generations will have to put the flesh on the bones. Okay. Is that what took place with the 14th Amendment? You're suggesting no, you like the language, or you think the language is clear.
Well, I think it's sufficient. I think it's sufficient because, they obviously could, there was no air travel. There was no, coming to the United States was a lot harder to do in 1868 than it is today, obviously. Justice Alito pointed that out. And that is the kind of thing you cannot foresee. People just flying here willy-nilly all of the time, landing and then leaving and then, popping out babies and so forth. But I think the language of subject to the jurisdiction thereof is sufficient. It may not be perfect, but it's sufficient to understand the point that they were making.
Well, if we were on a debate team, I would side with you and defend your definition of subject to jurisdiction. But in the back of my mind, I would be thinking, first of all, the founding fathers, the framers, didn't write this. It's 100 years later. This is legislation that is amended to the Constitution, and they should have written it better, because the consequences of this open definition of what subject to jurisdiction means is causing us to have this debate. If they would have been clear, we wouldn't be arguing about it. Just bang, this is what it means. It's kind of like what's the definition of is. It's a Bill Clintonism here, and the fuzziness is causing us difficulty.
But I don't understand any other way to do it. And you're right. And by the way, when I say the framers, obviously you're right. This is 100 years after the 1787 Constitution Convention, but they're still working with the framework of the actual original Constitution, and the amendments to it are still, obviously directly contained in it. So, the Bill of Rights obviously is a little bit different than when you get into some of these other amendments, the later amendments, and they were passed by, legislatures and so forth. But my point is, there is language that they could not have foreseen the knowledge to use at that time. So they used the language that kind of covered everything, and to me, the allegiance aspect of this is, what does allegiance mean? If we were to define this from any dictionary, I mean, I think it's a loyalty and an obedience to a sovereign nation is what allegiance kind of means. And if you are loyal to another nation, and you come here and have your baby, you don't have allegiance to this country.
I agree.
And therefore, you are not subject to the jurisdiction of this country, and therefore, your child is not a U.S. citizen. So,
okay, I'm going to demonstrate my ignorance.
Up and head on over.
Is the word allegiance in the 14th Amendment?
No, it is, but it is. It has been. Well, it probably should be. I would agree with that. But it is interpreted by people on both sides of this debate of birthright citizenship. It is interpreted to be the core tenet of being under the jurisdiction of the nation, that you are a citizen and loyal and allegiant to it, or you are a person on this on the soil that are that are allegiant to this. So if you're a student studying in the United States, but you always intend to graduate and go back home to Great Britain, well, you know what? You don't have allegiance to the United States. So if you have a child here, your child is not going to be a citizen because you don't have allegiance, and therefore are not subject to the jurisdiction thereof. Your jurisdiction is the UK, in my example.
And as far as contingent crackpot Brown being trusting anything that woman is dumber than a rock, or she's incredibly deceptive, or a combination of both. I mean, we have to remember, we're talking about a woman who actually said in her confirmation hearing that she couldn't define what a woman is because she's not a biologist, or she's not a scientist or physician, whatever her direct quote was, which is asinine. I mean, a 5-year-old girl understands what a girl is and what a boy is. And this woman can't define this. So this is somebody who's actually front and center in terms of interpreting the Constitution and its amendments therein. Do you want to hear her? She's 1 minute and 6 seconds of embarrassment here. Do you want to hear it so you can finish your commentary on it? Let's let people hear exactly what this, like you said, this embarrassment to the bench. Easily the most unqualified person in the history of the Supreme Court for the reasons you laid out. But let's listen to her for a minute.
I was thinking about this, and I think there are various sources that say this, that you obviously have permanent allegiance based on being born in whatever country you're from. That's what everybody recognizes. But you also have local allegiance when you are on the soil of this other sovereign. And I was thinking, I'm I, a US citizen, am visiting Japan. And what it means is that, if I steal someone's wallet in Japan, the Japanese authorities can arrest me and prosecute me. It's allegiance, meaning can they control you as a matter of law? I can also rely on them if my wallet is stolen to, under Japanese law, go and prosecute the person who has stolen it. So there's this relationship based on, even though I'm a temporary traveler, I'm just on vacation in Japan, I'm still locally owing allegiance in that sense.
No. There's a difference between the definition of allegiance and compliance and obedience. If I'm visiting France or Japan or Spain or Brazil, I am obligated to comply and obey their laws. None of that implies that I am pledging allegiance to that country and what it stands for. If I visit Iran, if I visit Saudi Arabia, I don't believe in their governing structure. I don't believe in Sharia law. But if I am a legal visitor in Saudi Arabia, I am obligated to comply with their laws and obey them therein, or I'm going to be arrested and jailed. This woman doesn't understand the difference between allegiance and compliance and obedience. I go back to what I said earlier. She's dumber than a rock. She can't tell you what a woman is. And now she can't define the difference between compliance, obedience, and allegiance.
Yeah, I want to read just a quick response to this from Mehek Cook, who's a Republican strategist and a guest on this show. She tweeted in response to that clip that I just played, "Your Airbnb host in Paris can throw you out for breaking house rules. That doesn't make you French." That's if she wants to play the wallet theft game in Japan, that is because allegiance means you have to follow their laws, and if you break those laws, you're now allegiance. She has no earthly idea what the word. You know what she should have said, Dr. Piper? I can't provide a definition for the word allegiance because I'm not I don't know, what would it be? The comparative to I'm not a scientist on. I don't know the definition of the word woman.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, she's not a scholar. She is. I mean, she might have a degree from Harvard. Ideologue. There you go. I'll take that. But
she's a political ideologue, and frankly, she's probably not as dumb. I mean, I've said twice now that she's dumber than a rock. That's probably unfair, and I should debate her ideas and not attack her as a person. So I apologize to you and all your audience for saying that. But out of frustration, I'm just thinking, how ridiculous. How ridiculous can you be to conflate the definition of these words? And that's the problem. So I get back to my point. The amendment, the 14th Amendment, is added 80 to 100 years after the crafting of the Constitution. And I defend your interpretation. I think it is probably what they meant because in the context is always king. We're talking about newfound freedoms for American citizens who were slaves. That's the context here. So we shouldn't interpret this amendment outside of the context, just like you shouldn't interpret scripture outside of the context of what Paul was addressing, or Peter, or James, or John, or Matthew. What are they addressing? What's the context of what they're saying? So the context of what I'm saying right now and what you're saying right now is this. We have a United States of America. We have citizenship for the country therein. There are requirements to be a citizen of the United States of America. And one of the expectations of citizenship is pledging allegiance to your country. Okay? And allegiance is different than compliance. Allegiance is different than obedience. Yes.
That's the best word or description I've heard so far from you or from anybody else. Allegiance is not the same thing as compliance. Just because you are forced to comply with something because it's a law doesn't not mean you have allegiance to that country. Is your intent to be a part of that country? Is your intent to remain a part of another country or a citizen of another country, but you're taking advantage of opportunities here? Compliance and allegiance are very different. That's brilliant. I love that.
And hindsight's always 20/20, but I'll say it anyway. If I would have been on the committees crafting the 14th Amendment, knowing what we know now, which obviously I wouldn't because a lot of the stuff has transpired henceforth, but I wish they would have thought this through and recognized that under the jurisdiction thereof could be fuzzy, and we may lose the context of what this amendment was intended to do because of goofballs like Ketanji Crackpot Brown misinterpreting it and using it in a politically ideological way to drive an agenda that we don't intend. And I think
it's a point well made, and it's a point well taken. My last word response to it, though, is going to be, again, the fact that they put any other language after the point means that it is indeed there are exceptions, and that would be birth or tourism, for example, and illegal immigration. Because if they intended for it to be, simply physical presence on American soil makes you a citizen if you're born there, then they would have just ended the amendment with those words. It would have just been simply, if you're born on American soil, you're a citizen, period. No jurisdiction, no allegiance, no other extraneous language at all. But because they did throw that extra language in there, it means there are exceptions. It doesn't mean you get to come here from another country on vacation, pop out a kid, and suddenly we're Americans. No, that's, they could have made it much more direct.
Logically, that you're spot on. There's no reason to add a qualification to a sentence if the qualification was unnecessary in the first place. Point well taken.
All right, good stuff. Let's move on now to speaking of the Supreme Court. Yesterday, or actually, I guess it would have been on Tuesday, the decision was revealed. Let's throw this up on the screen if I can real quick. There we go. The Supreme Court ruled 8-1 against Colorado's conversion therapy ban. And I'm just going to read a line or two of this.
Bob, you lost me. I can't hear you.
Oh, what happened here? Hold on.
Can't hear you right now, Bob.
Okay, why is that? I don't see anything. Let me, can you hear me, Dr. Piper?
You lost my audio.
You're not muted. You're not muted, Dr. Piper, so we should be able to hear you.
Can you hear me now?
I hear you. Can you hear me? All right. This is an interesting development. It's always something new. Always something new. Try to add that back on there. Can you hear me now, Dr. Piper? All right. All right. I'm going to try to fix this. We're going to reconnect with Dr. Piper, and hopefully we can get this fixed in short order here. So I'm going to reconnect with Dr. Piper. I'm going to give you a short intermission while I do that. You can enjoy this.
Vest on, boots laced, another name on the paper, another hard case. Got a wife back in Lubbock, kids in their Sunday best. I ain't some villain in a movie, I'm a man doing my best. You can scream in my face, you can block my way, but this badge on my chest means somebody saved today. You hold that sign, I hold this line in my hands. While you're chatting the street, I'm the one who stands. Yeah, you draw your crowd, I draw the line in the sand. Saw you playing for cameras, shoving phones in my crew, spitting words like traitor, like you know what we go through. When you circle that transport like it's some kind of game, there's a scared little girl in the backseat, you don't even know her name. You can scream in my face, you can block my way, but this badge on my chest means somebody saved today. You hold that sign, I'll hold this line in my hands. While you're chanting the street, I'm the one who stands. Yeah, you draw your crowd, I draw a line in the sand.
Okay, everybody, I think we've got things worked out now. Let's bring Dr. Piper back on. Not sure why the audio just flaked on us here, but Dr. Piper, you good now? Can you hear me?
I can hear you. You?
Okay, and I hear you. And now
Okay.
I tried to bring up the screen of the story that we're discussing here. So I'm going to try that again. That's when we lost connection before. Can you still hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know why. Every day is a new mystery when it comes to some of the tech that's involved here. Okay, so this is some coverage of the Supreme Court ruling 8-1, and I'll let you have some fun with the one in a moment, against Colorado's conversion therapy ban. I'm going to read just the opening paragraph here. The court issued a landmark ruling in a case involving bans on conversion therapy. The 8-1 ruling in Childs versus Salazar says Colorado's ban on talk conversion therapy likely violates free speech. This strongly signals that the law is unconstitutional as applied to talk therapy, and that the lower courts therefore applied the wrong standard in reviewing it. The Supreme Court reversed and remanded the lower courts for applying strict scrutiny to it. But this ruling did not strike down the statute. So basically, Dr. Piper, what I would like you to speak on and give us your expert analysis of is two things. Number one, the ruling, because it basically, Colorado was basically saying, hey, therapists, you can't tell a confused child who thinks that he or she is the opposite sex. You can't tell them that they're wrong. You can't tell them that they are a little boy or they are a little girl. You have to go along with their delusion. If you have to affirm what they say they are. That's what Colorado was telling therapists. And one therapist who happens to be a Christian said that my religious beliefs forbid me from saying these things that I do not believe are true. So on the basis of freedom of religion and freedom of speech, the Supreme Court struck down that ban on this therapy. So I want you to talk about it from that standpoint. But number two, they're calling it conversion therapy, which is very, very controversial and very, very different from telling a little boy that you are indeed a little boy. Dr. Piper, go ahead.
Well, again, common theme for a lot of what we talk about, certainly today, is words matter. Words have definitions. The way we define them matters. And as in the previous discussion, words and definitions matter. And we have to define what we're talking about. Conversion therapy. What does that mean? What does the word conversion mean? Now, if you're religious in any way, shape, or form, you understand that conversion is part of the religious conversation and has been for at least 2,000 years, if not more. People convert. They convert to Christianity. People will convert from being a Baptist to a Catholic or from a Catholic to a Baptist. What does that mean? It doesn't mean anything other than you thought through the ideas, you had a conversation with a theologian, a pastor, or a priest, and you decided through the conviction that has been brought upon you through your own research, your own reading, and by God himself that you're going to convert. And these people are trying to make that process of dialogue, conversation, counseling, and confession illegal. They're trying to make that illegal for a priest or a pastor or a counselor, a psychologist or a psychiatrist. And this is where it'll go. Words always lead somewhere. Or a parent to have that conversation with a client or a child or a grandchild that leads to conversion, a different way of thinking and a different way of living. The fact that we're trying to make conversion illegal should just rock everybody to their soul, because that is frightening, to make conversion illegal. Now, what the left has done, what progressives have done, is they've lumped two words together into one definition: conversion therapy and aversion therapy. Aversion therapy is providing a negative stimulus to stop people from doing something. For example, if you want to quit smoking, you may, what's the gum you choose that gives it a sour taste or whatever?
Nicorette, I think it is. Yeah.
Okay, so that's an aversion therapy to help you quit doing something. If you chew your fingernails, you bite your fingernails all the time, you might put something bitter on your fingernails, and therefore that will help you stop doing something. It'll help you stop a behavior that you don't want to continue to do. So aversion therapy is very different than conversion therapy. And they have conflated the two as a scare tactic, because when you hear conversion therapy, well, that's shock therapy, and that's all these negative things that they used to do to try to convert somebody from being a homosexual to a heterosexual. Garbage, people, garbage. They're trying to make conversion illegal. They're trying to stop your priest from hearing your confession and giving you priestly guidance from how to change your behavior and be compliant with your faith and with scripture behaviorally. They're trying to stop the priest from doing that. They're trying to stop the pastor from preaching at the pulpit on Sunday morning about why you need to confess this given sin and start living a biblical life, confession and repentance. They're trying to stop the Christian counselor at the Christian college from doing the same thing. And ultimately, they will try to stop the parent from doing it in the privacy of your home. So this is a good ruling, and Ketanji Crackpot Brown is, again, dead wrong on this. She's crazy. And I don't think she understands the difference between conversion and aversion therapy. I don't know if she understands how to define these terms.
No, I'm sure she doesn't, because she's not a scientist. Sorry, but she that's always going to be related to her. But and to be super clear about this too, what has a lot of people frustrated, myself included, is just the idea that this is considered by those covering it, quote unquote, and what Colorado called it, conversion therapy. Conversion therapy has widely been ridiculed by people saying, oh, you're trying to tell a homosexual to pray away the gay. If you pray hard enough, you won't be attracted to your same sex anymore. You'll be converted into a heterosexual. And that has been a debate and a discussion point for a very, very long time. Your explanation of conversion versus aversion aside, the part of that is quote unquote, related to pray away the gay is not what was crucial in this Supreme Court case, because this is about telling kids who are being brainwashed by the influencers in the trans agenda in this very dangerous grooming period of American history, that telling therapists they can't tell a kid who has been hooked by this, who has been brought into this, bizarre, whatever it is that you want to call, the trans agenda, but into this situation, that you can't tell them you're not actually, a little girl masquerade or who has been born in the wrong body. That if you tell them that, you are harming them. That is conversion therapy, to tell them you are what you are. And instead, it's literally the opposite. We're just saying, no, you actually can't convert from one sex to another. You are always going to be the sex, no matter how much lipstick you might put on, no matter what kind of a wig you might wear, or what kind of surgeries you might subject yourself to as you get older. You cannot convert. That's the only way conversion, I think, even works in this conversation. But basically telling therapists that they can't tell little boys that you're always going to be a boy, like Mr. Rogers did. Little girls, you're always going to be a girl, and you're going to grow up to be a lady. That's the way that it is. That's not converting anybody. That is affirming science, biology, and chromosomes, and anatomy and physiology and so forth. And that's what makes, I think, this so egregious, that they're calling it conversion therapy in the way that most people think of that.
And again, the duplicity of the left, the progressives, where they tell you that you're born that way, but yet in this case, you're not born that way, because you can convert from male to female. So
Bingo.
when you use the explanation of conversion as you just described it, exactly, you're pointing out the duplicity of the left, because they say you can't, and then they say, well, you must. So you can't have your cake and eat it too. Which is it? Are you born that way, or is sexuality fluid? And you can be anything you want to be on any given day, in any given moment. There are 57 different genders, and you can be one of the 57 today and the 56th one tomorrow. That's really where they are, and it makes no sense. And that's Ketanji Jackson Brown's worldview. It makes no sense. It's not grounded in reality. So, my point, however, and I want to continue because it's an issue of religious freedom. It's it's an issue of religious freedom, and it's an issue of one of the key tenets of Christianity, and that is confession, repentance, and religious conversion, becoming something new. You are a new creation in Christ. Behold, the old is gone and the new has come. Okay? 2 Corinthians 5:17. You are a new creation. What does that mean? You've become something new when you're in Christ. You've converted from being dead in your trespasses and sins. In Jesus's words, you've been born again, not born that way. You're born again. You've been converted into something new, transformed, biblical language, into something new. So the concept of conversion is critical to what it means to be a Christian. I would argue you can't be a Christian if you haven't converted. And if they start dumbing down the definition of language and words to mean that conversion is an evil thing because they've conflated it with shock therapy and aversion and all these negative things, praying the gay away, that's bad theology. Well, I don't know if it's, God can answer those prayers, but I think people who defer to praying the gay away miss the point. The point in this situation is if you have given temptations to behavior that's sinful as defined by Scripture, what are you supposed to do about it as defined by Scripture? You're supposed to confess it. You're supposed to repent, and you're supposed to live a different life. Now, whether or not you still have those temptations is somewhat irrelevant at that point in time, because you become progressively over time a new creation in Christ as you obey the scriptural admonitions and disciplines that are given to you. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. And it's a great expansion of your point on that, Dr. Piper. I want to get a couple other in here in the next 15 minutes before I have my next guest coming on. So I want you to watch this. This is a young man who is an NBA basketball player, or at least he was until just a couple of days ago. His name is Jaden Ivey. He was a player for the Chicago Bulls. And Jaden Ivey did some commentary about his Christian faith and his belief in Jesus Christ, and as such, his opposition to things like Pride Month. And he chastised the NBA for engaging in something that he has said is unrighteous, which is the idea that Pride Month should even happen and be acknowledged by the league. He was very swiftly released from his contract, waived by the Chicago Bulls, and is likely now, his career is likely over now because of this. This is his response after being waived by the Bulls and this story going public.
There's been many times where God has been so merciful, bro. Like, I've almost committed suicide multiple times, and I'm not ashamed to say it. I'm not ashamed. Because God was merciful to keep me here.
Brother.
I almost committed suicide. I had oxy pills in my hand, and my wife was telling me, "Don't do it. Don't do this. Don't go down this road." And God was convicting me, and I didn't know the truth. And so then, man, I didn't do it by God's grace. He kept me here. In terms of like LGBTQ. Right? I'm not against the man or the woman. I'm against what is contrary to the word of God. Man is not supposed to lie with a man, and a woman is not supposed to lie with a woman. So for me, as a Christian, as a born-again Christian who believes in Jesus Christ, right? I can proclaim the truth, what the word of God says. And I can do that with freedom. I have a mouth to speak. No one can stop me.
That's right.
Who is to stop me?
I'm going to stop it right there, Dr. Piper, to give you some time to analyze and respond to that.
Okay, so you could hit rewind on everything I just said leading up to this. This is a perfect example. Does this young man look angry and hateful? Does he sound angry and hateful in anything he's saying? He's simply saying, I'm a born-again Christian. I'm something today that I wasn't yesterday. I used to be suicidal. If you listen to the rest of his testimony on some of the other stuff that he's put out recently, into partying, into all sorts of immorality, that was his life. You know, if there's a stereotypical NBA lifestyle, he was it. Okay, he's not that anymore. He's converted. Okay, he's transformed. Biblical language, Jesus language, he's born again. Not born that way, born again. He's been transformed. He's a new creation in Christ. Again, this isn't preachy language. This is biblical language, people. Now, are we going to make it illegal for a young man like that to say what he just said? That's the question before us. And is it illegal? Should it be illegal for somebody to fire him for saying what he just said? That I believe in the Bible. I believe in 2,000 years of teaching of the New Testament and 3,500 years of teaching or more of the entire Bible, which is consistent from Genesis to Revelation on the issue of sexual morality. Over and over again, the Bible makes it clear that porneia, the Greek word for sexual immorality, which does include, don't let anybody tell you that it doesn't include heterosexual, homosexual, and all other forms of unmarried sex. That's what porneia meant. It was all inclusive. It meant sex is reserved for marriage. Period. End of story. Marriage was understood very clearly then, as it should be now. That's a man and a woman committing themselves in marriage, fidelity for life. Period. And that's where sex is to occur. Anything outside of that is wrong. It's sinful. It's wrong. It's contrary to the body of Christ. It's contrary to the teachings of the church. Should I be blackballed as a hater for saying everything I just said for the last 5 minutes? And should this young man be fired for saying it in a less aggressive way than what I just said? This is very much akin to the Finnish parliamentarian, I can't pronounce her last name, you probably covered her, Bob, where the European Union has found her guilty of a hate crime for simply quoting Bible verses. And she's been elected to the Finnish parliament. And then we have 23 different states in the United States that have anti-conversion therapy laws right now. 23 different states. And then a law was just passed in Canada this last week, if I remember correctly, in the same way, that it is illegal to express a biblical worldview when it comes to sexual morality. This is wrong. It's anti-Christian. It's Christophobia, if I could coin a term. We talk about Islamophobia and homophobia. First of all, bad language. Just because I disagree with you doesn't mean I'm afraid of you. Phobia means fear. If I disagree with your sexual choices, doesn't mean I'm afraid of you. It just means I disagree with you, and I should have the freedom to tell you so. And you should have the freedom to tell me so, especially if it's within the context of faith. And I'll guarantee you something else, Bob. If this kid were a Muslim saying the exact same stuff, we wouldn't be having this conversation. They wouldn't be going after him.
Or if this kid was just a Christian, which he is, but he did different things, they wouldn't have a problem. And there was a Babylon Bee post last night, actually. My wife was chuckling, and I said, what? And she showed it to me. And the Babylon Bee headline was something like, NBA agrees to reinstate Jaden Ivey if he does some cocaine and beats a few women.
Exactly. Babylon
because
perfect.
That's that you do those things and it is a-okay. Your roster spot is still secure. But this guy expresses his belief in Christ, his belief in Christianity, his belief that, in biblical, in scripture and in biblical truth and so forth. And suddenly he's got to go and this is the worst part about it, is they released him for conduct detrimental to the team. And one of his other, videos that he recorded, he said, I'd like to know what my conduct was. I passed my teammates the ball. I support my teammates. If I don't get on the floor because for some reason I'm a DNP, did not play coach's decision, I'm supporting them. If I'm on the floor, I'm doing my job. How is my conduct detrimental to this team? So, but again, some players who do far worse things are given passes and are allowed to be part of their organizations.
You can rape women, you can beat women, you can have 15 different kids out of wedlock, you can sleep with whatever is walking or not walking, and everything's cool. But you come out and say, hey, I'm a Christian, I'm born again, I used to be this way, I am now this way, and part of the way I live now is I think we should reserve our sex lives to our married partner, male and female. Period. End of story. Say that, and all hell breaks loose.
That's exactly right. Well, apparently also, as you can see on the screen, if you say what Isabel Brown, who is a conservative author and personality, and she was at CPAC this past weekend, saying that young Gen Zers get married and start having children. It's extraordinarily important for your well-being, for our well-being, for the country's well-being, for God's well-being, for everything that has been promoted that is good about the family. Start families. Well, that was a bridge too far for the shrews of the view. Dr. Piper, let's, I'll play a portion of this. I don't think we can take too much of it, but
I don't even know how to explain this story, but I'm going to tell you what happened. The Conservative Political Action Conference, known as CPAC, wrapped up this weekend, and conservative activist Isabel Brown had a message for her fellow Gen Z women, who reportedly are the least likely group in America to get married and have kids. But I want you to see this. Clip.
If you're not encouraging your children to grow up and have the courage to get married and have kids, more kids than they can afford before they think they're ready, it is high time to start. It is these choices, like deleting our dating apps and putting birth control pills and saying I do at the altar, that ultimately trickle down into the political policies that we will see save our country.
Okay. Okay. I just want to say, years ago, they used to come after women of color and accuse women of color of doing this very thing.
Wow.
And that's why they continue to cut all these programs and erase all these things.
Childcare programs.
Childcare, name it, name it. And now, had I known that it turns out we are all just one group of women. We're just one group.
Yeah.
I mean, because what is she,
So my ultimate beef with this.
okay, I don't want to hear too much more of that. I want to get into your response. To sum it up, obviously, Dr. Piper, all of the cackling shrews at that show proceeded to denigrate Isabel Brown for her suggestion that young women should get married first, by the way, and then have children, even if it's more than they can afford at the time, because you will find a way. And they're conflating that with, well, you can, I guess, infer what you wish, but they're conflating that with irresponsible young women getting pregnant by men who are not their husbands and who are not going to be around, and young children being raised in broken households and so forth, which of course is very destructive to, all of the community, much less any particular racial community. But Dr. Piper, go ahead.
I've said it before 1,000 times on your show, Bob, over the years, quoting the prophet Isaiah: woe unto him who calls evil good and good evil, bitter sweet and sweet bitter. Woe unto him who reverses definitions. And the ladies of The View are the quintessential poster child of that warning, because they're constantly, if you looked up in the encyclopedia, or if you Googled hypocrisy, duplicity, reversing definitions, calling things evil that are indeed good and calling things good that are indeed evil, Whoopi Goldberg and The View would have to be there, because this is a perfect example. They're calling marriage evil by inference here. They're calling having children evil. They're calling the family unit the bedrock of civilization, whether you're Christian or not, is a healthy family. A mom and a dad staying married and raising their kids under one roof. That is the bedrock to human civilization. And if you tear that foundation stone out of the building will collapse. And that's what they're doing. Now, I wish Miss Brown would have left the "before you can afford it" out of her sentence, just because it gave fodder to the Whoopi Goldbergs to go after her and say, well, you're advocating having children irresponsibly and putting the burden on the government to take care of the kids. That's what she's implying. And you used to criticize all the black women for doing that. So now it's okay? That's what Whoopi is trying to spin this into, which is obviously not at all what was being said. She was elevating parenthood. She was elevating marriage. She was putting family back where family belongs. And she was saying, children are good. They're not bad. Go have some after you've gotten married and you have a stable home where you can take care of them.
I agree to the extent that I think you meant that, but I don't have a problem with her saying before you can afford it, because
Yeah, I
she didn't mean to be irresponsible and again get pregnant out of wedlock and be a single mother because the dad isn't going to be around, which by the way is what people have criticized, of course, about certain cultures and certain racial demographics, because the statistics are what they are. And the fact that over 75% of young Black children are being raised without fathers in this country today is evidence of that. Nobody is saying, and Isabel Brown didn't say do that to any color of people. What she said was get married and have children, even if it's before you can afford them, because that means you want to start having your children younger in life instead of career first, waiting until you're 30, and then your prospects for having your children and having the size of family maybe that you wanted are much more limited. And I'm inferring a lot of what she meant by that. She's saying don't be afraid to get married and start your families. There will be time to work, you know, and your husband, you know, to work your into your careers and provide and so on and so forth. But if you wait until you've made it, so to speak, and that's what's happened. If you look strictly at birth rates, you know, a lot of people have been pointing out that the American population is being outbreeded, if you will, by the foreign-born populations that have come into this country. And it is leading to a very, very dangerous shift in American culture. And so what Isabel Brown is saying, we need Americans. We need to continue to be Americans. And that means we need to create more Americans. And we want to do it responsibly. Step one is get married. Make sure there are two parents in that household raising that child, even if maybe it isn't ideal as far as what your dual incomes are, or maybe a singular income if a mom has to obviously take time off to have children and start to raise them and so forth. But the point being, it's important to have families be built, because it's literally the building block of the entire culture that we have in this country.
Don't disagree with anything you just said. And lest I be misunderstood, get married, stay married to somebody of the opposite sex, and then trust God with all the children you have. Period. End of it.
That's perfect.
As far as a debate tactic, I just think she gave. You saw the headline when you put the clip up there of Whoopi saying her nonsense. The subtext or whatever the text was below that video was, Brown says have children before you can afford them. That was what they were going after.
Yes.
And actually, I lean into the Catholic view of having children more than the Protestant view now in my later years, because I think the whole idea of limiting the family through contraception and not trusting God with the size of your family and the number of children you have has been a negative that Protestantism has brought to the discussion of the family. I'll just say that as a Protestant. So I understand why your wisdom that you bring to this discussion is worth listening to within the body of Christ. As a debate tactic, I think she gave Goldberg something she didn't need to give her. Different crafting of that sentence might have been helpful.
Agreed. Yeah, I would agree with that. And I have no problem with that part of this, you know, that caveat, if you will. You know, ideally, yes, you would have enough money to be able to comfortably raise your child without any sweating. But you know what? We are a nation that lives paycheck to paycheck. I mean, middle class America lives paycheck to paycheck. To be quite honest, very, very few, statistically speaking, very, very few American families can afford to have children to the point where they're not going to struggle a little bit, because the cost of childcare is extraordinary. To raise a child from birth to 18, through the years, that number has changed, obviously, inflation and so forth, but it's an extraordinary burden. Almost everybody can't afford it. And if we all waited until we were comfortable enough to afford it without struggle, we would die off as a country. We just would. And that's what I think Isabel Brown is talking about here. We can't just wait until everything is hunky-dory to have kids, or it's going to be way too late, is the truth.
Well, and I also think it's an issue of priorities. As a former college president and a dean of students, I can't tell you the number of times on orientation weekend when all the freshmen are rolling up with mom and dad to unload the boxes in their newfound dorm room, the number of times I would get parents complaining about the expense and saying, you know, if we don't find no more money, Joey may have to come home after the semester because we can't afford this. But they're driving a Lexus, okay, or a BMW. And not that there's anything wrong with driving a Lexus or a BMW, folks, but don't gripe to me about the cost of college education or the cost of having children if you've made those materialistic things a higher priority than
priority. Bingo. It's about prioritization. Dr. Piper is spot on as always. Dr. Piper, I'm going to end it there. My next guest is waiting. I want to say thank you. Great insights and analysis all the way from the beginning and birthright citizenship. That's why I enjoy having you on. Great stuff, and I hope we can do this again next week.
All right, blessings. Take care.
Thank you. Blessings to you as well. There you go. That's Dr. Everett Piper. He is he's a blessing to us, honestly, because we get to discuss this important stuff with him every single week. And it's been that way for almost 10 years, which is phenomenal. From the radio to the podcast side, he is there. You know who else is there for us? Our friends at AFP, Americans for Prosperity. And I'm proud to tell you that this episode is brought to you in part by AFP and by, where's the screen? There's the screen, the Buckeye Blueprint, online at buckeyeblueprint.com. This is extraordinarily important. There are 3 E's that I think people need to be aware of: energy, economy, and education. Not necessarily in that order. All 3 of them are equally important. And the state of Ohio is lagging in all of them, and they shouldn't be. We as a state have the resources, both natural and political and human resource-wise. We have the ability to lead the nation and not be in the middle of the pack in any of those things. Economic freedom, people keeping more of what they earn, should be a high priority, and it can be done with the right policies. Educational opportunity with parents in charge, not systems, and not teachers' unions, and not radicals in charge of our children's education. And a modernized Ohio government that works to increase energy abundance, reliable, affordable power that isn't going to break us. All of those are possible because of the extraordinary resources the state of Ohio has. Look, people are proud of their state in every state in which they live. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to say that we are the greatest thing in the history of the world, but I'm proud of the state. But most importantly, I'm recognizing that the state does have resources that other states do not. That's just the truth of the story. So AFP, Americans for Prosperity Ohio, simply want to help our leaders take advantage of those resources and to make things better. You can volunteer in that effort by going to buckeyeblueprint.com and finding out what you can do, and also going to AFP, that's Americans for Prosperity Ohio. Go to the website, see what you can do to volunteer and to help shape policy that makes Ohio be the very best that it can be, a bigger, bolder, better Buckeye state. And thank you to AFP for being a foundational sponsor and partner of Strictly Speaking Unfiltered. All right. You probably saw this already because I shared this with you earlier this week. It was an astounding story we all learned of over the weekend, that there is a school board member in Parma who is also an Air Force veteran, who is also an Air Force reservist. And that means that she can, at any point in time, be called to deploy and to go into active duty as a reservist. And that is exactly what has happened to Ashley McTaggart. Ashley McTaggart is a Parma School Board, like I said, a Parma School Board member, and she has been deployed. She is going to have to go and serve her country due to what is going on in Iran. It doesn't mean she's being deployed to Iran particularly, but she is being deployed. That means she's going to have to miss some school board meetings. Well, according to the leftists on that school board, that means we get to boot her out. And the belief here is that this is a lot more than her service and about her ability to attend these meetings in person, that there is an ideological reason for this. And as you can see on the screen right now, coverage of this by redstate.com, a GOP rep has called on the Pentagon to intervene as the school board tries to revoke her seat from her. She was elected by the people in Parma to sit on that board, and they are trying to use her service to her country as a reason to revoke her spot on that board. Well, that representative who is calling on the Pentagon to step in and do something happens to be Representative Max Miller, and he joins us now on Strictly Speaking Unfiltered to tell us all about it. Representative Miller, good morning. Thank you for the time. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well. It's great to be back on your show. You know, everything that's taken place, and even with, President Donald J. Trump being back in office, I really did not think that you would see something like this, where you have Miss McTaggart, who is serving our country as a reservist, who serves our community on the Parma City School Board and this is what we get, and this is what they do. And Bob, I believe you said it best. Democrats do this all the time. When the elections don't go their way, what do? They cheat. And this is another way of how they are cheating in order to remove Ashley McTaggart from the school board, who is a wonderful conservative, who is a wonderful mother, and everyone knows her in the community. And this is nothing more than a cheap shot by crazy Democrats while she is serving our country. And what is so despicable and ironic about it is, Bob, she is serving our country for them, for the same people who are trying to remove her from the school board. And that is how sick these people on the school board are, and the treasurer, who are trying to remove her. And I have called on the Department of War, and I'm proud to say that we've been talking with them over the last week, and they have their lawyers on it. And I'm sure that Parma is going to get a rude awakening in the next couple of weeks or thereafter, and I can't wait for it.
Well, I'm so glad to know that you are taking advantage of the resources that you have and the connections you have with the Department of War, with the Pentagon, because Max, I'm just blown away that anybody would think that this is okay. I know that there are disagreements on boards, particularly on school boards in this day and age, after everything that we saw during the 4 years of Biden, especially when, the extraordinarily inappropriate materials are being presented in curricula and books on shelves and so forth, and parents coming to school board meetings and saying, you can't do this. You can't put pornographic illustrations and literature in our kids' libraries, and the woke school board members defending those things. And they want, conservative school board members out of their way so they can continue to try to brainwash our kids. We have seen this fight in school boards going on for a while now, but I've not seen anything like this. We found a reason to get rid of one of these conservatives who's in our way. She's in the service, and that's a good reason to revoke her seat from her. She can't be here in person. We're not letting her get on her phone screen from wherever it is that she may be deployed. This is an opportunity, Max. They're taking advantage of someone's service to the country to essentially remove them as an obstacle from their woke agenda.
Yeah, without question. And they will continue to do that every step of the way. And that's why we are now involved and have been involved. And it took about a week for us to really release a public statement. I didn't want to get over my, over my heels on anything and work with the Department of War. But there are two specific contacts that I'm working with right now who are overseeing this. And I will tell you, Bob, and this is no BS, Secretary Hegseth is aware of this situation, and he is aware of this situation, and that has been communicated to me by another individual who works at the Department of War. I'm not trying to be cute. I just want to make sure that we are successful while we are protecting Miss McTaggart in this ongoing investigation. But I just wanted to let you know that this went all the way up to the Secretary of War, and he is in the loop on this. And we are going to do everything we can to make sure that Miss McTaggart will remain on that board and to hold the Parma City School Department accountable for what they're doing. Once again, you and I are saying the same thing, and it's just shocking that any American, regardless of political affiliation, would seek to remove somebody who is a publicly elected official while they are deployed overseas protecting their freedom and also their family's freedom and their kids who probably also go to that school. It's disgusting, but it just shows you that these people, they don't think with logic and reason anymore. They don't care. Their decorum, their social rhetoric, everything you talked about a few years ago about CRT, DEI, and pornography in our children's schools, they were the ones pushing that. And it already, I believe, to a certain extent, with everything going on, we forgot about how Democrats ruined our country. We forgot about what they exposed our children to, how they made them 2 years behind in learning, not only through COVID, but through, accepting everybody and, getting rid of competitiveness. I mean, my little girl, she's 2.5 now, or she will be on the 4th. I can't wait till I encourage her to go out and be better in sports than her peers and to get better grades and to be as competitive as possible. These people created a woke society for our kids in our schools to make everyone the same. And that's what socialism is. And that's what they want. Make no mistake. And we are going to continue to fight and make sure Miss McTaggart stays on that board and these people get held accountable. And it's not just words. I'm not looking to be the Department of Justice right now in Pam Bondi, Bob. I'm looking to be representative for this district who is actually going to hold people accountable and make sure that they actually get what's coming to them and not just get a free pass like the DOJ is doing with so many people throughout our country.
You know, what makes this so frustrating for me, Congressman, is it's such an easy fix if they wanted to fix it. It's clear they have an agenda, because how easy would it be for them to just, as a board, say, motion for an exception? You know, there are specific rules that they have about attending, because they don't want board members skipping meetings because they're going to the movies that night or they're going to the ball game. You know, if you want to be a part of this board, you got to be here at the meetings. I know you can't do it virtually, work from home kind of a thing. I get that, and that's fine. But for somebody to raise a hand and say, like to make an exception, serving in the U.S. military is an exception and a reason for missing meetings that is excusable, it would take 2 seconds to do that. That's all they have to do is say, this is a very unique situation. If we're serving our country, we're not violating the school board rules, school board meeting rules about attending in person. That's all they have to do. And that lets you know the fact that they won't do that is because they want her gone, because she's an obstacle, not because she's not present. It's because they don't like it when she is present, quite frankly.
Yeah, without question. But, you know, Bob, let's see what happens here. Let's see if there's somebody, you know, who is doing this right now or at the Parma City School Board who is going to actually, you know, do the right thing. There is still time, as you have said. They did have one quick meeting that they put together to get this going, to discuss options. But make no mistake, I mean, you know, there is still time for the mayor, who I think very highly of, who's a good man. I've had a decent working relationship with him, and Mayor DeGeeter. I know he's a Democrat, but, you know, we don't see eye to eye on much. But in terms of local politics, you know, my hope is that someone like him will step in. You know, he's been mayor there for over a decade. People in that community respect him. I believe that he is somebody who knows that this is wrong. And I believe that his word would go a long way in getting this to de-escalate. And my hope is that he will do the right thing. It doesn't matter if he's a Democrat or a Republican or an independent. This has nothing to do, in my opinion, about doing the right thing, about helping Miss McTaggart, who's deployed serving our country. If someone does that, it will restore my faith. But I don't have any expectations that'll happen.
Yeah, I don't either, Congressman. Congressman, I'm glad you're leading on this, and I'm glad you are talking to the Pentagon, and I'm glad to hear that Secretary Hegseth knows about this. And Lord only knows he's very busy with something called the Iran military conflict. I'm still not calling it a war because it hasn't been declared. But I hope that he is, when he has the opportunity, able to do something about this or weigh in on this, that he will do that. So I'm so glad to know that that is happening. While we have you, obviously, I want to talk about a couple of other really important things. Where are we? I had Senator Moreno on Monday, and he laid out his 5-point plan to get everything done, meaning funding DHS, while also making sure, not in the short term through 2029, but for a long period of time, our ICE and Border Patrol agencies can be fully funded as well, while ending this DHS shutdown stalemate. And the way to do it is through reconciliation. President Trump yesterday Truth Socialed a message that basically said, that's what we're going to do. Majority Leader Thune and Speaker Johnson are now kind of on the same page here. We're going to fund everything except ICE and Border Patrol in one bill. We're going to pass it on both sides. And then because the left said they will not pass it on the Senate side if ICE is funded with any more money than they already have. So we're going to pass it on both sides, and then we're going to use the reconciliation process to put a bill that funds, as Senator Moreno said, ICE and CBP for 10 years to make sure that this never happens again. What is your understanding of where we are now? What can you clarify from all of that?
So I spoke with the Speaker of the House yesterday through text message back and forth when I saw that this deal had been cut. You've laid out a very pragmatic way to look at it. But I have to tell you, as a member of the House of Representatives, the Senate continues to fail. I mean, time and time again, I'm just going to be very direct and straight with you, Bob, as I always am. I'm sick and tired of these oligarchs in the Senate who can't get off their ass and pass a damn bill. You know, us in the House, we have passed to fully fund DHS in a bipartisan manner, not just 3 times, Bob, but 4 times with the last 60 days CR. And all I hear from senators, left and right, Republican, all up and down, I'm not going home until I get the SAVE Act done. We're going to fully fund the Department of Homeland Security. And you know what happens? After 41 days of them not being able to find a solution to the problem, 5 senators acquiesce on the floor, and they're not all Republican. I believe only 2 or 3 were Republican to keep the majority, and 2 were Democrat. And what they did is they separated CBP and ICE. I know that CBP and ICE is funded for 95% only for the next couple of years. But make no mistake, what the Senate just did is they're breaking precedent. They are removing 2 very important agencies in CBP and ICE, and they are taking them away from the main DHS appropriations. That's a terrible play call. If I was Speaker of the House, I would look at President John Thune and I would tell him to shove it like he has told Speaker Mike Johnson to shove it time and time again. Do you know what's sitting up in the Senate, Bob? The SAVE Act sitting up in the Senate. You want to know what else is? 3 bills that could actually pass and fully fund the Department of Homeland Security. All I hear from senators are excuses about how they can't get the job done and how they can't break up the filibuster and convince their colleagues. This isn't just me saying it. Go on Twitter and look at every House member. The Senate is full of a bunch of hot air and a bunch of rhinos who are all talk on Twitter without actually punching through real legislation and conservative legislation for the American people. And I got to tell you, I'm sick of it. And I'm sick of Speaker Mike Johnson accepting the Senate's problems as the House's own when our bills are much more conservative and actually do what the president wants. And to be clear, when we passed the 60-day CR and when the Senate did this over the weekend, the president came out and he said he hated it. He said he did not like the deal, and he put that on Truth Social. And now here we are, and we are here because we are acquiescing to Democrats. What's Chuck Schumer saying, Bob? Chuck Schumer saying that he won. Every Democrat out there is saying they won the deal because they're setting precedent removing ICE, which just isn't for removing illegal immigrants. People forget it's the #1 agency when it comes to human trafficking, which is a huge issue within the United States of America and all over the globe. And Border Patrol, to leave these men and women out of the department that they are in, I believe is a grave mistake, because if you end up with a Democrat president in 2028, they can take all that funding away. And that is not a promise. That can actually happen. And so I get very nervous about the road we're going down right now in Congress. And I'm just going to tell you, this second reconciliation package does not have my vote at all right now, and many others within the House.
So you're talking about if there's a reconciliation package that the president says he wants on his desk by June 1st, which funds ICE and CBP for 10 years, not just for the next 3 years to 2029. You're saying you would not support that?
That's not necessarily true, Bob. What this DHS appropriations does is it separates CBP and ICE from this. ICE is already funded to 95 extent for the next few years. This is more fancy. Right. This is more fancy talk from Washington, D.C. that you're getting. They are separating CBP and ICE from the main DHS appropriations. People are going to tell you that it's going to be funded for the next 10 years. If we lose the majority, if there is no Republican president in 2028, that funding's gone, Bob, because you have separated it. You've separated CBP and DHS from its mother, from its umbrella partner, which is DHS. So you are now removing them. It is a precedent. I would not move forward because Democrats will not fund CBP and ICE if and when they get in charge in the future. And I believe this is something that should not be moved forward. So yes,
they won't. But if I may, Congressman, they won't fund it now, obviously under DHS, which is why we're still sitting here on day, what are we at? Are we close to day 50 or something like that?
But Bob, how many times are we going to take a knee to these people? How many times are we going to fight 41 days and take a knee to Chuck Schumer and let him set precedent and let him take a victory lap right now and put our faces and drag us through the pavement I mean, every single day right now, all I see is weakness from the United States Senate, and I see the House leading. And all I see is Mike Johnson working with President Thune
Well,
and then backing down.
if I may, but Max, if I may, as you know, you have a very different bar to clear. You have a simple majority on the House side. They've got to get to end debate. They've got to get 60 votes to do that, and then have a vote on these things, as you know. And you're right to say that there are a bunch of rhinos there. You're right. But even if all of the Republicans in the Senate are on board and all 53 of them say, let's go, they don't have the numbers because
so they should just give up. So all the tough talk about not going home until the SAVE Act is done, not going home until the entire Department of Homeland Security, they're all on vacations right now. I'm at home. I know where all these people are. This is all BS. I'm done giving them excuses, and so should you. Just because they don't have the votes to the filibuster, then guess what? Then do what you need, because I can tell you the only reason why the House gets so much pressure, and as we should, is because we're up for re-election every other year, Bob, which means that I get held accountable for every single vote that I take. You know who doesn't? These freaking 100 millionaires in the Senate who are oligarchs, who are in their 50s and 70s and 80s, who get to take all of these rhino votes, and then they never get held accountable. That's how we had Sherrod Brown in our state for 3 terms. Because this guy's voting record was left of literally Bernie Sanders, okay? But he had a 6-year term, so Ohioans forgot about every liberal vote that he took, but it finally caught up with him. It takes a while. I'm sick of the talk. If the Senate wants to get something done, then stop coming to the House to bail out your problems. The American people want what we have passed. The president wants what we have passed. It is his desired legislation. So I'm sick of watching Republicans punk out altogether without getting major wins across the board, without getting the SAVE Act, without fully funding the Department of Homeland Security. They can't figure it out. Then they need to, and they need to get all together and have a little, I don't know what it is, and sit down with the president, because if the president applied as much pressure as he does to House members, because he knows we're up every other year, to Senate individuals, I believe the game would change quite a bit.
But the president sitting down with senators would only involve Republican senators, obviously. He's not going to move a single Democrat senator. And without 7 of them coming on board the way they did to end the shutdown this past summer, the full government shutdown, without Schumer caving, if you will, and getting that to happen, this stalemate continues, and it continues in perpetuity.
But what that shows me, and I don't mean to interject and to cut you off, but what that shows me is that they have the inability to cut a deal. How is it in the House of Representatives, where we have a smaller majority than the United States Senate, and we still get several Democrats to join us on these issues? How is that? Every single time, a lot of people say
Senate Democrats, though, Congressman, Senate Democrats, though, have made it very, very clear when it comes to ICE. They are riding the insanity that happened in Minnesota, and they're going to ride it into the ground. They're going to, if you don't get judicial warrants and you don't have masks on ICE, nothing as far as DHS funding is going to go through. And that stalemate is going to last all the way to the midterms. And guess who's going to get the blame for it? It won't be the Democrats, because we are, as you are pointing out, we're the party in power. We have the House, we have the Senate, and we are stuck, and nothing is getting done. So the fear here, obviously, and I'm not saying I have a dog in this fight, other than I want to win the midterms too, and I want the SAVE Act passed. We all want the same things here, but I want ICE to be able to do its job. And if they are forced to take off masks, and if they're forced to get a judicial warrant to arrest every person that already has a final order of deportation, one judge has already given that green light to go get them. Now you're going to get another judge to write a judicial warrant to do it. If we have to do that, Congressman, we will not be able to enforce the law. And so
there are many other things.
If we want DHS to be funded, somebody's going to have to blink here. And if the Democrats in the Senate aren't going to blink, it doesn't matter how unified the Republicans are. They just don't have the numbers, right?
They don't have the numbers, but what we're also not bringing up are other things that they can negotiate. I mean, once again, Democrats want things. You just said it. They want no masks. They want, which I'm not for, and that's why we're not agreeing to it, and that's why they're not agreeing up to it in the Senate. But Bob, make no mistake, there are other things on the table that the administration and the Senate could bring to the Senate Democrats that would get them on board. We did the same thing in the House, okay? Look, when it comes
to...
So I'll give you an example. right now, a big thing within the entire country are TPS, right? Temporary protected service. Democrats would really like a lot of these individuals, for the most part, to stay here. All right. Some of these individuals, Bob, they come from similar value systems that we do, Judeo-Christian values. They're here. They have never committed a crime. They would like they would like them to stay here for a little bit longer. That's it. Those are one of the things that we can do. We're not talking about somebody who's coming over.
Because Congressman, forgive me for this, because I'm not on the Hill where you are. So explain this to me. My outsider's observation is that there's no way giving TPS, extended TPS to, let's say, the Haitian community in Springfield. Okay, giving extended TPS status to these individuals is going to make the Democrats say, okay, you can have ICE funding now, and they get to keep their masks, and you don't need judicial warrants. From the outside, I don't see that as being even close to being doable. They're not.
That's not. I mean, Bob, that's one example.
What else do you have?
That's one example of many. But I will tell you right now, I respectfully disagree with you. I got to tell you that we've got in our community in the 7th, we've got roughly a few hundred Ukrainians who are on TPS, who are set to be, gone, I believe, within the next year. I'll tell you right now, they're really good people. I would fight to keep them here, and I would want them to stay here because they've been contributing to our society, and they've been doing really well. They've been paying their taxes. They're here, never broken the law. You have Democrats who have these districts that are full of these people that would lay on the tracks for something like that. So I respectfully disagree. They really do care about those people just as much as I care about the American people. That's the difference, and that's what I think a lot of people need to understand.
But you're talking about House members when you're talking about districts. It's the Senate side that is the problem, and you might even get Ohio's senators.
No, Bob, I'm referring to the Senate side.
Okay. When you said districts, you got people in these districts. I thought you were talking about their congressional representatives.
I'm stuck in the House. I'm a House rat. I'm a member. It's what was stuck.
So you think Democrat senators, so then you think these Democrat senators, the ones that are just being so obstinate about allowing ICE to be funded unless they get these stupid reforms, which essentially would end ICE altogether, would abolish.
I would rather give them that win, Bob, than to take off ICE officers. Yes. And I believe No,
Congressman, what I mean is, though, you're saying that in order to get, for example, these Ukrainians who are under TPS, temporary protected status, to be able to stay longer, you're saying they would submit on the mask issue, and they would submit on the judicial warrant issue?
Yeah, I believe so. And you want to know? I'll tell you why. In my belief, and that's because it gives them a win. They want a win. They need a win on something. And their win right now, which you and I are kind of agreeing to disagree on, is that they have separated CBP and ICE from the DHS appropriations. And I understand your point about right now, how is it going to get funded? What are we going to do? Well, Bob, if Democrats get elected in 28 and we don't have the majority in any chamber, ICE and CBP won't be funded, period. And they will remove all of that funding that all of us have done right now through President Trump and the one big beautiful bill. It can be undone, and it would be undone. And if you separate, once again, CBP and ICE out of the main DHS appropriation bill, it will bite our country in the ass, and you will go back to a Biden administration immigration plan under the next Democrat president of the United States. And my hope that doesn't come back in 2028. And that is what I am trying to prevent. I understand that we have a problem now, right? But I am trying to prevent a much larger problem in the future when the Democrat Party has already shown you that they will let 15 to 20 million people in our country. And right now is not the time to take a knee. And I am sick of it. And I'm just telling you, once again, I understand they don't have the votes in the Senate. That sounds like a Senate problem that they need to figure out, and the American people and President Trump need to put all the targets and all the attention on them, because we have continued to execute this out of the House, and I'm sick of the excuses. Well, they don't have the numbers. Well, they don't have the votes to break up the filibuster. Well, then you know what, Bob? They need to do the same thing they do to damn House members, which is put them in a corner and try to bully them until they break. And let's see if they actually have a spine. Because all I got to tell you is people come to the House and they want us to roll over because we're supposed to be intimidated every other year because we're up for election. The same pressure needs to be put on the United States Senate, and they don't feel it. because they would rather do a voice vote in the middle of the night and screw you over and the American people without fully funding the Department of Homeland Security. And that's what they did. And then take a vacation when they didn't get anything done over 41 days. So yes, it's hard for me to sit here and think that this is some type of big win for the American people when I can't even get them another tax deduction and a reconciliation to get more money back in their pocket. And I have to do this to clean up the Senate's mess. This doesn't put any more money in my constituents' checking accounts. This doesn't help their health care. This doesn't help what's going on right now in the 7th District. This is incredibly frustrating for me that we're going to pass a second reconciliation, Bob, and I can't get anything from my constituents. And this is what is so upsetting. So yeah, right now, I'm more than just leaning no on what I think is incredibly reckless and us taking a big old knee to Democrats day in and day out.
See, I think where our disagreement is we obviously we have the same goal, which is to win the midterms. If we lose the midterms, it's all lost. You and I both agree on that. I think we are much less likely, and this is where we disagree. I think we're much less likely to win in November if we spend the next 7 months not having TSA at the airports, not having the full DHS funding that needs to be done, and hundreds of thousands of American families going without checks, and the delays and the security issues, because we're talking about, sleeper cells being activated. We're already seeing Islamic terror attacks happen and shootings and so forth here, Congressman. I think if we let the status quo go for the next 7 months, and and by the way, you mentioned the Democrats need a win in order to make something happen. They've gotten a bunch of wins on this. They got the head of Kristi Noem. They got the head of Greg Bovino.
Well,
they got the body
Secretary Noem did that to herself. She
okay,
was
maybe
not
so. Maybe so, but they were
calling.
the congressman, they were calling for her to go, and she's gone.
So
whatever the reason is. Hold on, but they've gotten a bunch of wins already on this issue. And my point is, because the Senate doesn't have the numbers, if we stay where we are right now in the next 7 months, we're going to lose the midterms.
Bob, you're going to lose the midterms anyway. Do you want to know why? Because if you have in the House, right?
Well, we have a better chance if we get this funded and we get this resolved right now. We have a better chance.
Bob, I respectfully disagree, and here's why. Please look up these members of Congress: Marionette Miller Meeks, Rob Bresnahan, Ryan McKenzie, Mike Lawler, Nick LaLota, Young Kim, Ken Calvert, David Valadeo, and I can go on. All of those members I just mentioned are all Republicans who won in Democrat districts. If the generic ballot right now is -11, do you think, in all seriousness, for a Mike Lawler, who's in a D7 in New York, if he votes for a skinny reconciliation bill that actually does all of this, which it really doesn't fully fund all of the Department of Homeland Security, and TSA, as we know, and everyone has been paid through President Trump, and wait lines are back to normal across the country, and everything is back to business.
I don't know if that's continuing, right?
No, it is. It is back to normal, Bob. So we're back to
no,
business.
But what I mean is the president was able to secure a paycheck for these people.
Well, he's going to be able to secure more than just a paycheck. But to my point, going back to it, do you think all of those Republicans who have really moderate districts, them voting for this is going to help them come back in November? I respectfully disagree. I say no. I think it's actually going to hurt them, and it guarantees you a loss in November in the House. And that is the discussion we have been having over the weekend, is that you have many moderate members who don't have solid Republican districts, who play in enemy territory every other year, like Brian Fitzpatrick, and I can name 20 more, right? They aren't our 20s. They can't vote for something like this and come back. So that logic, to me, agree to disagree once again, but if they vote for something like this, you will 1,000% lose the House, because you are doing nothing for their constituents when it comes to putting more money back in their checking account, or lowering the cost of healthcare, or any of the cost of goods that we see right now. If they want to do a second reconciliation, Bob, they can get me to buy into it, but they're going to have to work on tax priorities and things the American people right now are truly asking for. If you look at the polling, number one thing is cost of goods. We can actually help effectuate that within reconciliation. Why aren't we doing it? I don't know. I can't tell you, but that's a priority of everyone's that should be accomplished. So yes, I think that this is reckless. I think that we're going to lose the majority, because of these moderates who are going to have to take this vote. You're going to have to give them a win as well.
So it's a lose-lose proposition is what I'm hearing, because I mean, I firmly believe that if we don't fund DHS and then use a reconciliation to fund ICE and CBP, we're going to lose. You're saying if we do vote on that and pass it that way, we're going to lose. So essentially, are we writing off November?
I believe that as soon as we got desperate and decided to whip out a second reconciliation bill because we panicked, I think that all signs are pointing to that, and I'm very frustrated by it. Bob, we passed reconciliation, the first one, July 4th of last year.
Yeah.
What the hell have we been doing in Congress, Bob? What the hell have we been doing since July 4th of last year? Why haven't we been working on a second reconciliation? I mean, in all seriousness,
we were told at that time, Speaker Johnson said, we're going to pass this one and we're going to, the one big beautiful bill goes through with simple majority on the other side too. And another one is coming. We were told that.
But here we are, Bob. I know another one is coming, but what is it? We're in April.
Yeah.
Okay. It's almost been a year and we haven't even gotten to work on it. I'm on the Ways and Means Committee. I haven't even seen a draft of reconciliation. And the first time I heard about that we were actually doing it was over the weekend.
Why is that then? Why has...
I'm telling you, it's because they're hitting the panic button. Because they right now don't know how to get things moved through Congress. And I'm going to go back to it. And it's because the Senate is the biggest obstruction we have. The Speaker has no other play call. When I was texting with him the other day, I don't want to betray his trust, but this is not how a leader leads, in my opinion. He said exactly what you did. I had no other choice. I could not continue to work with the Senate. They cannot have the filibuster. So we have to bring this back down to the House. And I said, you have accepted the Senate's problem as our own. And now you have made it our problem. And that is not how this should be worked out.
Well, but I mean, respectfully, doesn't it have
no
to be?
conference between either.
No, but I was going to say, doesn't it have to be? Any problem the Senate has to be the House's problem, and any problem vice versa is the same way. Because without both houses passing something, we get no laws.
That would be great, and that would be fantastic if that's the way that it happened, Bob. But once again, since you and I have been talking, I mean, the SAVE Act, 3 DHS appropriations bills have been sitting up in the Senate.
Yeah.
Other great policy. They don't move it. Why don't they work with us? I'm telling you, it's because they have a 6-year term and they know that they can outlast us and they can bully us and get what they want at the end of the day. It's that simple. I'm telling you this by lived experience in these rooms dealing with the Senate. That is how they look at House members. They look at House members as beneath them, and that we're not going to be here long enough for them to work with.
I'm still failing to understand, though, because you seem to be framing this as a Republican versus Republican fight between House and Senate, when the real enemies here are not Republicans in the Senate. There might be 2 or 3 of them that are, the recalcitrants, the McConnells and the Tillises and the Murkowskis and so forth. But the problem here is getting 7 Democrats to come on board. You know that as well as I do. That's the enemy here. And offering them TPS protection for Ukrainians for a little while longer isn't going to make them suddenly say, "Oh, okay, we'll vote to fund ICE now." They're
correct.
They're terrified of their base. They want to keep flying flags of Renee Good and Alex Preddy up there and saying,
"I don't know,
this
Bob.
is what
I got to
happens."
tell you, I'm kind of look, Bob.
This is what they're doing.
I know. I'm kind of shocked look, to me, this whole position is incredibly weak, and I'm sticking by that, and I'm not moving. I think that acquiescing to Democrats in the Senate and going online right now and watching them take a victory lap while TSA is getting paid, while everything is back to normal. Once again, everyone wants to settle for what they think is good now, which will lead us to a certain death if and when Democrats get in again. And I don't see how people are so short-sighted that they're looking to take this isn't even a win for anybody and for us. Okay, down the road in 2028, if I'm still honored enough to be in this capacity or around, I'd love to come back on your show if Democrats get in charge or if later on, and what they do and remove CBP and ICE from the Department of Homeland Security when it comes to funding. And then you and I will play this conversation back. And I believe a lot of people right now are going to regret advocating for this because, Bob, you continuously say that it's fully funded for all of this. It's not. We got to dig into this deeper. It's a DHS appropriations bill that is removing CBP and ICE, and that is going to be passed
Funding it
separately.
separately, right?
Right. That is a dangerous precedent to do. That means Democrats will do that in the future, and we just said, okay, you can do that. This is why I don't understand how someone can be for this thing when it is so detrimental to the long term of our country, as opposed to what we can figure out within the next several months.
I think the problem is we are literally looking at two unworkable situations. It's unrealistic to expect them to pass funding for ICE, long-term funding for ICE and CBP in the full-on DHS funding package, because they have made that very clear. They're terrified of their base. They won't do it. So it's either they don't get funded at all, or we fund them through the separation that we're talking about here, which is also not ideal, as you say, because if they take over again, they're gonna defund that. They're gonna pass a bill to get rid of that. And I get it. So it's the point. The point is, if one is not workable and the other is not workable, what the hell do we do? Where do we go?
Then we
because
continue
neither one of those things, they both end up with ICE and CBP being defunded in 2028 or after 2029.
2029. That's correct. Without question. But I mean, once again, I like to fight. I would continue to push. I'm not looking to secure our country for the next year when I'm worried about the next 60 years of my daughter being here and immigration. And I don't want her to be somebody on that train in Charlotte, North Carolina. Okay.
Amen.
Well, that's my point, Bob. I'm not willing to sacrifice a year of us not being able to get our job done in Congress for the future of our damn country. That's not going to happen while I'm in Congress. And I am telling you that separating CBP and ICE is acquiescing to Democrats, and they know that, and that's why they're laughing at us, because they know that when they get in charge, and it's only a matter of time, they're going to take all of that funding out. And people like you and I and everyone who is all, whatever for this, we're really going to be sitting there being like, shit, we shouldn't have done that. And that is my biggest concern. Republicans, I understand they don't have the votes in the Senate. Then they need to figure it out, and they need to work on a better negotiation strategy with Senate Democrats to give them what they need in order for them to continue on. But right now, I am not willing to separate CBP and ICE from the full DHS and sacrifice a short time of stability for a long time of stability. And that's right now what is happening within our country.
I think, Congressman, and thanks for staying on overtime here. We're already well over our time, but I don't think there exists something. You say they have to find a better negotiating strategy. I don't think there's anything that the Senate could offer the Senate Democrats to pass the DHS funding with ICE funded and with CBP funded. That will make them do that at any point in time, much less in this midterm season. I cannot imagine them. And the reason I say that is because they have already announced this is the hill on which they will die. If they accept a bunch of other outside items, and you're talking about Ukrainian people, whatever other things you think there are out there. And I would love to see a list of things that Democrats would bend on and say, okay, we'll give you your CBP funding. We'll give you your ICE funding. We'll allow the masks. We'll allow no judicial warrants. We'll do all of that in exchange for A, B, C, D, and E. If somebody can show me A, B, C, D, and E, then I will join you in pressuring the Senate to give it to them. Give it to them so that we can have this. But I don't know that there's a list of things, A, B, C, D, and E, that will make these Democrats cross their base. Their base will kill them if they let them die on the without securing what they have promised here on this hill.
You're not wrong, Bob, but just remember, I'll leave you with this. At the end of the day, what I don't like to hear is that, this is a problem. We're in the majority, this, and this. There's only one party throughout this entire process who has voted to fully fund DHS, and that's the Republican Party. And somehow this message has gotten lost over the last 50 days that Democrats are the one who have shut the country down and that we have taken their problem as our own. And once again, this is what is so mind-boggling to me. Everyone's saying this, we got to figure this out, we got to figure that out. I understand that we're the party in charge, but once again, we are the party who's continuing to make sure that ICE, CBP, and the Department of Homeland Security is being paid, as well as TSA and everyone else. It is the Democrats. It is the Democrat Party, once again, who is not paying these people. It is the Democrat Party, once again, who is not coming to the table to vote yes on a CR or anything else. It is the Democrat Party who always voted for these things. And just because Donald J. Trump is in office, they are not. And that is the message Republicans need to continue to say to the American people. And that is why I still look at you after this conversation and tell the Senate to put on their big boy pants and to do their goddamn job, because that is exactly what they need to do. So
well, and I look at you after this conversation and say I agree with the last thing that you said. The Democrats are the obstacle here. The Democrats are the enemy here. The Democrats are the ones who are causing this. And you're 100% right. They have passed all of these things before when needed. We've all seen a reminder of Hakeem Jeffries in 2015 when Obama was the president, just hammering on the House floor. We have to pass DHS funding. The American people deserve Homeland Security. And now that President Trump is here, he is against it, obviously. The Democrats are the enemy. That's the one thing on which we were absolutely in lockstep on this. They are the ones that have to be made to come to terms with the fact that they can't run this government from their minority position. We have to find a way to make them remember that.
Yeah,
Congressman, thank you for your work on this. Keep up the fight. Obviously, there has to be a solution. I don't know that we're all going to find it on this conversation, but keep up the fight, and thanks for sharing it with us. So and by the way, keep me posted on Ashley and anything you get from Secretary Hegseth or from the Pentagon, because obviously that's right here in our backyard and right here in the district, and we want to make sure we're watching out for her.
you got it. I'll follow up and really appreciate being on with you. I'll see you soon.
Thank you, Congressman. There you go. Max Miller joining us to wrap it up here. We went a little bit over time with him, and that's okay. I'm very curious to hear what you think about this. I haven't been able to read the chat, obviously, today because we've been doing the guests. But I want to look at the comments section. If you've made some good points in the chat today, do me a favor, throw them in the comments so that when I'm looking back at this later today, I can see what you have to say. Max Miller said, no way should we separate CBP and ICE from the DHS funding bill so that we can get it passed now and then work on that through reconciliation. Senator Moreno said that's exactly what has to happen, because there's no way the Democrats in the Senate are going to vote to pass the DHS funding with ICE included. So we're at a stalemate here, not just between Republicans and Democrats, but we're at a stalemate between Republicans and Republicans, as you just heard from Representative Miller. I want to know what you think. I want to know how you see this playing out. Put it in the comments section on Rumble, if you would, please. And I'll read those and we'll address those on tomorrow's show. How does that sound? All right. Thanks, everybody. Apologies to the chatters. I haven't been able to get in and visit with you guys today. But like I said, throw your stuff on the comment section. Don't forget, like, subscribe, and share this channel, everybody. Be well, be safe, and stay free. God bless. See you tomorrow. Bye-bye.